Welcome back. Week 1 of the Caribbean Premier League is done. What a start by the Trinbago Knight Riders to this tournament. They're on top of the table on 6 points, having won all of their 3 matches. Surprising anyway that the St. Lucia Zouk sits in second, also on 6 points, but they've lost 1 match, having played 4 matches. I want to welcome to the show St. Lucia Zouk's coach and former Zimbabwe batsman and captain and wicketkeeper and England coach. Listen, the guy's resume can fit on about 5 pages. Andy Flower, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Ryan. It's great to be out here.
Well, it's your first Caribbean Premier League experience, albeit it's under quarantine conditions. How have you been enjoying it? Has it been frustrating for you?
The first week was when we were tucked in our hotel rooms and couldn't move out of them. But really, in the scheme of things, that's not a huge hardship. The second week we could train, and then it's just been brilliant getting into the games. And, already there's been some really great quality cricket played, and as importantly, really good entertainment. I know not for anyone in the stadium really to watch, but at least it's out there on TV around the world.
Yeah, certainly millions around the world have been enjoying the start of this Caribbean Premier League tournament, and millions would have had the question, Andy, this St. Lucia Zouk's team, St. Lucia Stars team as it was previously known as, does not have a successful track record in this CPL, yet at the start of this tournament, the team has actually started off very well. The team sits in second after the first week of the tournament. They've just lost 1 match. Not coincidentally, you have just come into this setup as well. How do you explain this turnaround, or early turnaround?
Well, I think it would be fair to say that the St. Lucia franchise, like the island itself, I suppose, and its population is smaller and without some of the cricketing power and history that some of these other bigger islands have. But that doesn't mean that we can not only compete with these other islands, but beat them occasionally too. And, we've got our eyes set on qualification, obviously, to get into the playoffs. I think that Darren and I have enjoyed our short time working together. We actually worked together about 5 years ago in the first year of the Pakistan Super League when we were both at Peshawar Zalmi. But it's great to be working with Darren. He's an outstanding captain. And we've got a group of cricketers that are learning how to work together, how to dovetail, how to get the most out of themselves. And we've seen some really superb performances from young and old. So long may that continue.
I'm interested to get your opinion on Darren Sammy himself, because he's a man on a mission. Prior to the start of the CPL, he said, he wants to have a good tournament, and from there, perhaps look at an international recall for the West Indies ahead of the Men's T20 World Cup in 2021. Your thoughts as a former international coach, current international coach?
Well, I wouldn't put anything past Darren. He's got great self-belief. He's got great belief in his team, and he's done some amazing things. He's certainly been a great role model for young St. Lucian cricketers. I think he was the first St. Lucian to play for the West Indies.
Correct.
And then went on to captain them very successfully. And that is a great pathway to show young people what can be achieved with some determination and some belief, some thought, and some hard work. And that sort of inspiration is really important for the island. Whether he can go on and force his way into the West Indies side, I'm not sure about that, but who knows?
Who knows? Certainly we'll have to see. It all depends, as Darren Sammy said himself, it'll all depend on his hard work and whether he can break back into that West Indies team. The Caribbean Premier League, you've been in numerous franchise T20 leagues around the world, IPL, PSL. You've been with the Multan Sultans, still are actually. What do you make, Andy Flower, of the Caribbean Premier League?
Well, I mean, the most obvious thing about it is that it's hugely exciting. The way the Caribbean cricketers play the game, there's always something exciting happening. And I know in normal years that there'd be these vibrant, noisy crowds, music, and a proper party going on at the same time. And it's obviously a pity for everyone that that's not happening. But this is one of the premier franchise competitions in the world. So it's very entertaining. There's obviously great skill and real power available. I'm really glad from a personal perspective to be involved in it.
Yeah, you've followed international cricket for a long time as well. When you looked at West Indies cricket, Phil Simmons back as West Indies head coach, what do you make of the West Indies team as a former England coach?
Well, I think they are very well led by both Phil and Jason Holder. I think those are obviously one is a very experienced leader, and he's been around the block. Jason's a young man making his way as a leader, but he's a very impressive young man. I think he took on the job with very little senior experience. And it seemed like it was a little bit early for him, but maybe that was a real stroke of genius from whoever made those decisions, because he looks like a guy that is going to be a really positive, solid, thoughtful, caring influence on West Indian cricket for many years to come. I hope that's the case.
I just want to get your thoughts on something extraordinary that happened this past week, in the first week of the CPL. Your St. Lucia Zouks were actually playing the Barbados Tridents. There was a lot of rain, as there has been around Trinidad and Tobago for the last week. And in all of that rain, the Zouks ended up needing, by virtue of the Duckworth-Lewis system, 47 runs from 5 overs with all 10 wickets in hand. Now, former West Indies fast bowler Tony Gray, who you know very well, by the way, raised some concerns about the Duckworth-Lewis system, or at least this part of the Duckworth-Lewis system. I'm just interested to find out from you, as a former international player, as an international coach, is this something that the International Cricket Council and perhaps even the MCC need to look at?
Just speaking briefly about Tony Gray first, I think it's a valid question. Tony toured Zimbabwe, I think either in the late 80s or early 90s, and I remember playing one of my first serious first-class games against Tony. I'm pretty certain about that. But a really valid question. I'm glad that we got on the right end of the Duckworth-Lewis calculation the other day. I think if it had been slightly better playing conditions, it might have been a little tighter, a tighter chase. But because the outfield was obviously wet from the rain interruption and quite wet, they were slightly compromised with a wet ball and a little harder to hold your own in the field. As far as the calculation goes, I'm no mathematical genius. And I don't know how they might tweak that, but what happened in the first part of that game was they got off to an outstanding start, and we dragged ourselves back into it. So I think they were 131 for 7 with 2 overs to go, and that in itself is a fairly chaseable target. And the fact that they were 7 down cost them in the Duckworth-Lewis calculation. So I think we should always be looking to improve as people, as teams, and we should be looking to improve systems as well. And if the mathematicians can look at that calculation and tweak it a little for 2020 cricket, then that can only do the game good.
Can't have Andy Flower on and not ask him about Zimbabwean cricket. You are an absolute legend playing for Zimbabwe, one of the greatest batsmen and wicketkeepers to have played the game for that country. What do you make of the sport in Zimbabwe right now? Are you a little bit disappointed that Zimbabwe has fallen off as much as it has?
I'm heartbroken, Ryan. It's not just for the sport, but for the country. It is a terrible tragedy. And so unnecessary. And it is, the problems in the country are perpetrated by an elite that is that is more interested in lining its own pockets than looking after its citizens. And that is a real tragedy for a country with such amazing resources available. And just with a little bit of leadership and a little bit of integrity, they could do so much more with that country. And as the country declines, it's hard to keep their best brains, their best physical talent. And so the economy suffers more, and the Zimbabwean sport suffers. So it's very difficult for Zimbabwean cricket to come back from this position without good organization and integrity at the top.
Well, you were such a good player for Zimbabwe, and you've been such a phenomenal coach for the England team and all of these T20 franchises. When you get into a franchise like the St. Lucia Zouks, as I mentioned, which hasn't performed at optimum over the last few years or at any point in time during the CPL, how does one like yourself begin re-engineering a team like that for success?
Well, the first thing to realize is that franchise coaching and leadership is quite different to coaching an international team that you're with 12 months of the year. So your challenge here is to get a group that don't know each other in the main together and with some sort of unity of purpose and direction very quickly. And there's certain things you can do to accelerate that. And it's certainly working in partnership with Darren. That's been quite easy to achieve with this Zouks team. The squad has been really excellent so far. We've had a couple of good results, which makes the dressing room feel a little more comfortable and confident, which is very important. But there's a long way to go. We've had 4 games, still 6 games to go in this round robin. They're good sides in this league. So we really need to keep growing as a team and keep sharpening up. I still don't think we've hit our strats at all with the ball, not even close. So there should be more to come as we improve, I hope.
Well, we certainly look
yes,
forward.
But it's a really interesting challenge for leaders, to get a new group of people together. You're only together for about 4 to 5 weeks usually, and it's an interesting challenge and one of the very enjoyable aspects of doing the job.
Andy Flower, we certainly wish you and the St. Lucia Zouks all of the success for the remainder of this Caribbean Premier League tournament. Thank you so much for joining us today for a short conversation. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure, Ryan. Thanks a lot. Andy
Flower, OBE, Order of the British Empire, having won in Ashes with the England cricket team as head coach as well. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.